What's going on, guys, and welcome back. So today we have my super duper ultimate top secret deck. We actually did a deck profile on it, but the deck changed a lot. We optimized it a ton. We played like 100 some games on pixelborn. I think I finished like 63% win, and not quite as high as I was hoping, but at the same time we were changing out a bunch of things, and one of the iterations I think I went like 7 and 13, so that hurt a lot. But overall, I think the deck is really strong, and I think it's a contender that really nobody is considering, and that is Purple Bucky. It is not Tempo. Personally, I think Tempo is a strong tier 2 deck, but I don't see it reliably winning these major type tournaments. As far as set championships go, yeah, I think it'll definitely top some and get you some Ursulas. Do I think it's going to win them? Here or there, but again, I don't think it's in that top 5 strongest decks. This deck, however, I think it might be. It generates a lot of advantage. It is evasive to all get up, so it's very hard to deal with, and we have some great utility cards. So we're going to go ahead, and I got 2 matches that we did on hardcore ranked, and then we will go over the deck. I got the ideal play line, utility pieces, cards that work together. We're going to go in depth a lot more than other videos that we have done, simply because this is truly the deck that I'm playing for the format, the deck I'm grinding with, the deck that I'm investing the time into. We can't do this with every deck. I don't have weeks of time to put into every single video, unfortunately. So our first matchup, we are going first. We have 2 merfolks, the Friends, the Mim, Ursula. Did I say we're going first? We're going second. Snake and Bruno. So going second, what do I want to do blind second when I don't really know what I'm playing against? The merfolks definitely have to go. Other than that, I want to dig for another turn 1 play and ideally hit like my evasive play line. If you hit Bucky or Blue Fairy, great, cool. They're just going to help you gain advantage over your opponent. But we really want to hit our other 1-drop line because Merfolk just isn't going to do it going second. Even with the bounce cards, I did not feel like it was the great call. So we get rid of everything other than Fox because blind second, Fox is still a good card. It's still a good card. We don't hit our turn 1 play, but we're going second, so we do get 1 more card. We'll see what we do. We hit Fairy Godmother. This card is insane. I can't wait to talk about it. I mean, you guys already know, right? You already know. We hit a Blue Fairy, so that's okay. If we can hit our 1-drop, we have Pegasus, so we'll be in a pretty good spot. We got Merlin Rabbit, the potential draw, Wildcat, so for against an item deck, that could help, and Ursula to hit some type of songs. We can't even talk. We have utility. Tamatoa goes away, Popsicle goes, so it's probably red-blue, right? Red-blue. Sapphire Steel doesn't play Tamatoa as often, but sometimes they do. So we hit Ursula. We're going to ink the Fairy. I feel like I'm going to be inking a lot of these cards. I don't think we're going to get to them. Arguably could have kept her at the moment. And we see a Flynn Rider come down. So I'm like, okay, so definitely red-blue now. We know that. We're going to go Ursula and see his hand. And it's Hiram, Stone, Goofy, Maui, Sisu. And that Maui with Flynn on board is very troublesome. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty troublesome. He gets the 3 from the Flynn. Just trying to kind of think, like, at least we have the Fox, but we're going to lose multiple cards. And he actually inks the Maui. I'm like, that helps me out a lot. I got hope now. Like, you know, he could have just played the Maui and sat on it, and that 3 is going to add up quicker than I can do anything to deal with it. Sisu comes down, gets rid of Ursula. So that turns off our bounce play this turn too, which is unfortunate. However, we can go ahead, say, ink the Godmother. Again, could have inked the Ursula. Kept the Godmother because her challenger status is actually really important. We play the Wildcat though, so not only can we get rid of an item, but he's going to come down with Hiram. Like, we just know that's going to happen. Goofy goes away. We mostly wanted to turn off that +3 from the Flynn, and they both have the 2 attack, so it worked. Hiram does come down, hits his item, gets rid of it, waiting to see what he does. If either character quested, we would challenge it in a heartbeat. Instead, we get to draw. So now it's Maui, Lumiere, Flynn, Stone, and Dime. Really not looking good. He could essentially ink the Stone, play the Lumiere, play the Flynn, and then come back with Maui the next turn, and then just sit on the Flins and win. Versus green purple, like they're not gonna be able to deal with that. I'm not gonna be able to get the. And if I try to put the cards out to quest, you just challenge them and take them away because they have low strength. Like that would have been the play if I were in his shoes. I would have just sat on the Lumiere and the Flins. Like I said, you go Lumiere, Flynn on this turn, next turn Maui, and just run with it. And the 3 you would get from the Lumiere, again, would pressure me to put out a stronger character, which I do have the Fox, but once that Maui comes on, you'd get 6 per turn, so 3 turns, and you're just going to win the game. You can even quest with your other characters in the process. Just don't do anything with your Flynns and your Mauis, and you're going to win pretty quickly. Anyway, we're way behind here, trying to just think of a way out of it. That comes down just as draw fodder. He's going to pop it with the Hiram. We know he's got a Flynn in hand. We know he's still got the Maui, unless he inked it already, because he does end up inking another one. But either way, like Popsicle comes down here. We can get rid of that with, with our Wildcat, I guess. So not looking good for us at all at this point. So it's never over, but it feels pretty much over at this point. Our opponent goes to 6. Another Lumiere comes down, and I think that's enough to call it over at this point. Like there's really nothing I'm going to be able to do. We can try to Bruno one. I was like, well, if we go Pegasus, maybe we exert, take that out, and then Pegasus could potentially sing Bruno next turn. We got 2 Foxes, just trying to like think of a way that how can we get out of this situation, right? We still have the 4 though, so he's not getting the 3 from the Flins. And again, I was like, okay, so now we can either hardcast or sing the Bruno. We have double Foxes. We have the Wildcat, although Sisu's going to trade with the Wildcat really, really nicely in his favor. But at this point, it's just like very, very small chance. Luckily, it's 7-2, and we got that going for us. Madame Medusa comes down though, and that takes out our Pegasus, which that's the nail in the coffin. Like it was already a really, really long shot of us winning this game, but that Medusa all but just shores it up. Like there's nothing we can do. We're not going to be able to get out of this, but see what happens. They go to 10. We hit a friends, and it's like, well, you can friends and Fox. We can Bruno, get rid of a Lumiere. We actually hit it, so that's cool. Now we have a little wiggle room to play with. Our characters don't just outright die. We can put 4 on the hero, take out one of the Sisus. But again, we can't play any other characters, so it's like we're going to ink the friends. Again, like I said, we're pretty much fighting a losing battle this turn, or this game, because he can just quest out here. Realistically, I can't deal with his whole board, and then he just wins. Lucky Dime comes down. Again, that's just going to be draw fodder for the Hiram. So pop that, draw 2. Waiting to see. That Medusa also was 6 or 5 strength. Now we got rid of 1 Lumiere. That's going to generate him 3 lore. So it's like you could just quest with the Sisu, go to 15. You're going to get the 3 from Flynn, and then you just quest out. Or you can just challenge there. Either way it works. Take out both characters. Again, you're going to get the 3 from the Medusa next turn. I can't take out the Hiram and the Flynn. Well, I mean, we could take out 1, but realistically, like, what's the point? We weren't going to be able to come back and win that game. So we go on to game 2. This time we get to go first. So completely different play line now. So we know what we're playing against. We're going first. We have Diablo. We have the Pegasus play line. We're just missing a Bucky or a Blue Fairy. In this matchup, I definitely want Bucky over Blue Fairy. And a little bit later, I'll talk about like when I kind of go for each one individually. We get rid of the Pegasus because I was going to prioritize like turn 1 Pegasus, turn 2 Bucky, turn 3 Diablo if we hit the Bucky. This was assuming. And then Diablo's going to be able to start getting us draws as well. And there's always that chance that you draw into another Pegasus. And sure, we could have drew into another Diablo, but I thought at least with the Diablo playline, by turn 3, I have 3 characters on board. So just going a little bit wider so I can quest a little bit more aggressively. Because in this matchup, you do want to speed it up and try to play more aggro. But like I said, we hit the Pegasus, we hit Fairy Godmother. The 2 Brunos are 90% of the time in this scenario just going to go ahead and end up as ink. So we see Maleficent Dragon go away, Popsicle goes down. We hit the Ursula then, which we're not going to go for songs this time. We're going to go ahead and throw that Bucky down. Like I said, we can go for Diablo then next turn. Force our opponent to start discarding. Blue Fairy's going to put in work if he tries to put any characters down. We draw another Blue Fairy, so we can go ahead and get rid of her. Just keep that Bruno as a potential, like a potential maybe. And we see a Lucky Dime go away. I figured at this point, after game 1, just seeing, I'm like, well, he's got the Goofies, he's got the Mauis. His turn 2 is Flynn and Lumiere. I really didn't expect him to have the Rush Queen, so I felt pretty safe questing with the Bucky there. Just like I said, his 2-drop spots filled up pretty good. Sisu comes down. That's going to unfortunately take care of our Pegasus. But we do hit another option here. I'm like, do we go ahead ink? I'm like, no, we got Bruno. We're going to ink Bruno. And then we throw the Merfolk down. So I'm like, well, at least now we got more lore that we could quest for, and it's also going to force him to discard a card, which is going to be really good. Lumiere comes down, which makes Sisu trade with the Diablo, so that's actually really good. This definitely is not a normal red-blue list. That's definitely for sure. We're going to get rid of Blue Fairy here and play our Fairy Godmother. Bucky's going to once again make our opponent discard a card. And then I was like, what do we want to do here? If we quest with the Merfolk, we can almost force the Lumiere, which is also going to force a discard. So he comes down with the Hiram. He's going to pop one of the Popsicles, draw 2 cards. And then Lumiere is going to challenge the Merfolk, which is going to force him to discard another card. We're at 5 already, too. So then on our turn, we can play the Pegasus, force another discard, quest with the Fairy Godmother, give the Bucky the extra effect and the 3 strength. So Bucky can take out the Lumiere. Checking the discard pile just to remember where we're at there. He did discard a couple of those Medusas early, so that's what we wanted to check on. So again, we play Pegasus. He's going to discard, go down to 2 cards. Quest to 8 with the Fairy Godmother. Crash the Bucky. Bucky goes back to our hand, so we can replay Bucky. Like, that actually feels really good. Then next turn, if he decides to quest with the Hiram, pop the Popsicle, draw 2 cards. Once again, we can quest with Fairy Godmother, crash the Pegasus then, and then, you know, replay the Pegasus, or play Bucky and then come back with Pegasus at a later point. So our opponent does get the draw 2, has the dragon down, and we come down with a Sisu. So Sisu could be tricky, and we draw probably the best card that we could have here. So we can go ahead, ink, quest the Queen, boost the Pegasus. Our Pegasus isn't going to outright lose yet, though. We get the Rabbit, and I don't want the Sisu to take out my Queen, so we're going to go 1-1. She would have been able to put 3 damage on the Queen, so we weren't going to lose her as long as we got 1 more character down, which we could have went Bucky if we didn't hit another 1-drop. But yeah, I'm feeling a lot better this game. Things kind of swung in our favor much quicker. This deck isn't necessarily built to challenge your opponent. However, Fairy Godmother kind of fixes that. Like, if you can get to that mid game and still have characters and a hand, you can actually trade with your opponent incredibly well, because then you just go back to your hand here. So now we can play Bucky, shift the Pegasus, make him discard the last card. Everything gains evasive, so Rabbit and Merfolk are going to be untouchable. Our opponent has no hand. We can go to 16, sing the friends just to get a couple extra cards, and again, we're at 16. So that's really showcasing a lot of what the deck can do. The deck's nowhere near linear, though. So Sisu comes down, doesn't matter, we still had 2 characters that survive it. And with the 16-5 advantage, with 3 cards in hand, we're going to draw for turn. Even if we couldn't quest out, we got an evasive in the Pegasus. And if we, you know, like, we're sitting in such a good spot there. Even if we lost our whole board, we're not sitting in that bad of a spot. So that's obviously one of the big meta matchups. We have another match to go over now. Once again, we are going second. We have Pegasus, the Fox, the Rabbit, Fox, Snake, Merfolk, and Pegasus. Going second, I don't mind the Pegasus playline, so we're actually going to commit to that and get rid of everything else. Like, we're going to go full on Evasive, and we hit Bucky, which is just even better. So we hit the Bucky play, and now we can go... Oh, we paused our video. We hit our... Come on. We hit the Bucky, so that's going to be really good. He comes down with Pegasus of his own, so right away I assume green steel. Like, not many other people are playing Bucky deck or green decks other than, you know, this one. I guess Tempo does run the Pegasus package. But we see Bucky come down. I'm like, well, this might look really familiar. Like, we're going to go ahead and Bucky. And I'm like, you know what? Wildcat's useless here. We're going to go Ursula. Let's check his hands, see what songs he's got. And he actually has Ursula, Sudden Chill, Storm Rage on. I don't want that Storm Rage on to just wreck my board, dealing 2 damage and getting rid of my important characters. So we quest, so let's say we hit the Sudden Chill instead. He's going to ink the Ursula, play the other Ursula. We can shift. He's going to double sing, draw 2 cards, take out our characters. So I didn't want that. I'd rather discard 2 from my hand and just kind of deal with him that way. So we go aggressive here. I'm like, what do we want to do with that? Is it necessarily the right play line? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe we should have held the Merfolk in hand, and then we could have, say, discarded Merfolk plus a Pegasus instead. That maybe was the better play line, just because then we were guaranteed to get a Pegasus down, or we would have the Pan plus Pegasus in hand, because that 2 lore from the Merfolk, it's only going to last 1 turn anyway, so we probably would have been better off holding the Merfolk. Pan coming down with his Rush is going to help us out a lot. Here we get rid of the Double Singer. We can quest with that. Again, with Bucky on board, I was like, there's Diablo, there's Aladdin, there is Jafar Dreadnought. I didn't feel safe keeping that card in my hand, and I would really want to get to 5, if not 6 or 7 ink. So we quest with the Evasive here, and we're just taking it kind of slow. Our opponent drew Diablo, Ursula. Ursula's not a bad draw. Diablo's kind of slow, doesn't really provide a whole lot. We draw another Bucky. So again, not ideal. Neither one of us are drawing good. We're going to quest with the Pan. He's going to quest out faster than us and has a bit more strength on board, so that is unfortunate. Goes to 7, and he had along came Zeus to deal with our Pan. That's actually going to hurt quite a bit, because again, that was the one way we were just staying in this game at this point. But it's only 7-5. Drawing Rabbit's pretty good, and then we draw into a Sudden Chill, which we drew into ink. But we got to our 6 curve. That's the highest cost card in the deck is 6. 6 allows us to play multiple characters on many turns, so 6 is like really where you want to get to early. He takes out ours and then can go ahead and strength on the Rabbit, which on the bright side we draw. Downside, we draw an Ursula. We lose our Bucky there too, so now our opponent actually has quite a good board on us. I was like, how do we want to do this? Let's play Ursula, Snake, bounce Ursula, play Ursula. You could have argued that we could have played Bucky, but at this point, like, quest Bucky, play Snake, bounce Bucky, play Ursula, and we'd have all 3 on board still. I just wanted to start going after my opponent's board. We both get another Deceiver of All, and now in this really awkward game state after that Diablo 2, like, I'm actually sitting really good. The Snake's 3 strength put me right back in the game. Our opponent doing that also was a bit odd. I was like, okay, so we're going to do this. I don't want to just wait a turn, get the free advantage off the Fairy Godmother, because if he hits something like he let the Storm Rage on, I lose my Fairy Godmother. Like, we had to get rid of that Ursula Deceiver of All. And now if he goes into mine with his Diablo, well, then it's Bucky versus Fairy Godmother, and I will take that matchup every single time. Our opponent also is sitting on 4 ink, which means a lot of his cards are not in play. We saw one... along came Zeus already too, so there's a really good chance he only has 1 left in deck. We do lose our Ursula that way, which again, that's fine by me. We quest, we play the Merfolk, and we pass the turn. Our opponent can't take out our card just yet, so that's going to be very helpful. He draws Bucky, we draw Bucky. For like 5 turns, we're both drawing really bad cards. And now all of a sudden we both draw a really good card. However, my board state is going to help my really good card much better. Opponent draws Sudden Chill. It hurt when we did it, hurts when they do it. We lose our Merfolk, which that's fine by me. That actually works out really good. Like I said, 6 ink means we can play multiple cards. Quest with Fairy Godmother, Diablo into Diablo. Then we can go ahead and replay our Diablo because Fairy Godmother lets it go back to our hand. Draw 2. We hit Sudden Chill and Pegasus. So I'm like, okay, easy enough. We can go ahead and then we play our Pegasus after inking the Sudden Chill, since we couldn't play Sudden Chill anyway. Our opponent goes with Bruno, which, well, when we have no hand, it's of course going to hit our Fairy Godmother. I was like, ooh, good play, good play. That'll get you every time. But I'm like, how do we want to do this? Let's just quest out, go to 17, throw down the Merfolk, force our opponent to really have something. We get Shift Pegasus, and that is pretty much going to seal up this game. Our opponent does play an Aladdin, which means we're going to get rid of the card in our hand, and then they come back with Robin Hood. However, they cannot deal with our board, so we are going to get the win. Going into game 2, we're going second. Oops, I lost you guys. The one thing I do dislike about this on Pixelborn is that the loser picks first or second instead of just the opposite person going first or second, so that way both players go first. However, it works out in the end. So we're going second once again. We have Pegasus, Mim, Merfolk, Ursula, Fairy Godmother, Wildcat, and Blue Fairy. Going second, Merfolk, I don't want it. Wildcat in this matchup, I don't like it, I don't want it. Blue Fairy actually isn't horrible. I was like, maybe we keep her. Ursula to hit songs, Snake to bounce Ursula and replay her. I'm like, at that point, it's like, you know what, let's get rid of Blue Fairy. I have a lot of other draw cards. Fairy's very nice, but in this matchup, actually, I don't know. Maybe you do keep Fairy there, right? Like, I was like, well, with my Ursulas, my turn 2 was going to be Ursula. Turn 3 was likely going to be Snake, bounce Ursula. Turn 4 then play Ursula. So I'm like, I really don't see Blue Fairy coming down anytime soon. A lot of the time, especially on the play though, Blue Fairy is very, sorry about that. Haven't played those two in the same deck in a long time. Blue Fairy is very good on the play because it can just counter that Bucky discard very nicely. You come back with Bucky after your Blue Fairy. Our opponent at this point, I'm like, okay, we want to check it out because they have the Deceiver of All, so they're going to come after our hand. Then I'm like, ooh, 2 Sudden Chills. Let's quest here. They're not going to do anything about it. Almost playing the Pegasus, but if he double sings Sudden Chill, I lose 2 cards. And then he sings Sudden Chill with the other Ursula, I lose 3 cards. If I played the Pegasus there, I lose my entire hand. And I'm like, well, I don't want that. If I lose everything but Diablo and my opponent just has 1 card in hand, I'm actually okay with that because Snake would take out the Ursula on my next turn. His other Ursula would be exerted. So essentially it'd be Ursula Diablo versus Ursula Diablo, but I would have the good Ursula. We're going to play Bucky here. Again, keeping Pegasus in our hand because we know he has the Sudden Chill, and I don't want to lose it. Smart, he comes back with the Ursula in case we had a song in hand, and then he could sing the Sudden Chill and essentially discard both of our cards. Ink's Sudden Chill then at that point, and I was like, I didn't quite see that coming. I thought, you'd play the Sudden Chill, and I'm like, maybe the other card, I was like, grab your swords, maybe it's going to be useless. Like, I got Bucky, I had Diablo, you're going to get your last card discarded. Why our opponent did this, maybe they just overthought it, but they should have inked the Pegasus, played the Sudden Chill. I would have discarded my Pegasus, so at this point everything would be the same for our opponent, but we would not have Pegasus on board is essentially what would happen. So they go into our Ursula with both of theirs. Bruno, that's just going to go ahead and be some good ink. We can take out the other Ursula. Might as well take out the one that has 2. I'm like, do we then Pegasus take it out? I'm like, no, let's actually hold on to it. We draw into a Pegasus, so if our opponent has a hand, we're going to discard it. They go Robin Hood, Shift Robin Hood in one play. That's a pretty good 2-card combo there in this situation. But we can go Shift Pegasus now, and we can freely quest. I'm like, Pegasus is going to go ahead and just take out the Ursula. I want to keep him at absolute minimum. We survive the hit. We're evasive. He's not going to do anything to us. Bucky's evasive, so now Bucky gets a free shot at questing. And here I'm like, okay, so we can quest, play Diablo, and should have just inked the Fox. With the Diablo sitting on board, I was like, but he's only at 4 ink, so there's a good chance his card that comes out won't be able to do anything anyway. And on the chance that he holds anything in his hand, we do have the cards where we can either just come back with Pegasus, or we can go Pegasus, shift Pegasus. That is going to be the route we do, so that way the Fox and the Bucky can go ahead, quest, throw down the Ursula. We're threatening 6 now, so our opponent has to do something to take a character off of our board. However, Bucky, Fox, Diablo, and Pegasus all have evasive. They hit us with a sudden chill, which means that we win the game because they essentially cannot do anything to us. So there's a couple matches against some of the top decks of this format. Like I said, especially the red-blue deck, it was an interesting take on it, kind of focusing on Flynn and Lumiere in the early game, and a little bit less on the ramp. I personally would probably just stick with the more Sisu control, Ice Block control type, but it is refreshing to see other takes on decks. So let's go ahead and look into the deck list. And then again, we're going to go ahead and talk about a lot of the things, the choices, the hows, the whys, the wheres, the whens. 13 uninkable cards. I was pretty happy with that. We're very high in our 3s, pretty high in our 2s, and a couple 4s. Our 5s are actually decent too, and then, like I said, we top out at 6. So the curve of the deck 6, and especially with so many 1, 2s, and 3s, like I said, if you get to 6 ink, you can play 2 cards on so many turns. This deck really thrives once you get to that point. It is pretty expensive. You saw Diablo, you saw Ursula, Deceiver of All, so you know what that means. The deck is going to have some cost to it. We're going to go through all the cards and the ratios, and then I'll talk about some of the play lines, cards, how they work together, utility pieces, when Bucky, when Blue Fairy. So we got 4 Merfolk, 4 Pegasus. That is our turn 1 play. Like I said, this is an aggro option. It's a late game. You can couple it up with other cards being a 1-drop, and a questing for 2. You can get it down early when you're trying to get your opponent to empty their hand, and it can also act as bait for songs like Let the Storm Rage On. 3 Blue Fairy, 3 Mim Snake, 4 Diablo, and 4 Ursulas. Not a whole lot to say about it. The Blue Fairy, I think Bucky usually is the better play between the 2, especially because we have so many other ways that we can draw in this deck. So Blue Fairy, while being very nice and keeping your hand full, a lot of the times she takes a back seat to the Bucky. 4 Fox, Rush is good. 4 Strength is good. Not a whole lot more to say about it. Peter Pan Shadowfinder. Not only does this card give all of your evasive characters Rush, it has Rush, it's evasive, it's a 3-2 or a 2-3, so it can deal with a Diablo on a just completely clean. Their Diablo is exerted. Obviously, your draw for turn. They're going to draw for Bucky. You play the Pan, you take out the Bucky, your Pan sticks around, and it feels really, really good. We are playing 4 of our own Bucky, 4 Ursulas, a couple Wildcats, 3 Merlin Rabbits, 4 Fairy Godmother. This card has just been absolutely crazy. I wish I started testing it harder earlier. 4 Pegasus, and then the 2 Yzmas. We're playing 9 songs, being 2 Sudden Chills, 4 Friends on the Other Sides, and 3 We Don't Talk About Bruno. So let's go ahead and talk about Bruno. And by Bruno, I mean the rest of the deck. Your ideal turn 1 play is going to be your Pegasus. Sometimes you will go for Merfolk. Like if I know it's against like red-blue, sometimes I will prioritize that Merfolk because it's an aggro card. It's not bad. Will I keep one or will I mulligan it away? That depends. Against red-blue, if I'm on the play, even if you're on the draw sometimes, if it's my only 1-drop, I will keep the Merfolk in my hand. Otherwise, if I have Merfolk and Pegasus, I usually will mulligan it away because although getting super aggro is nice early on, it kind of hurts when you get multiple of these and you don't have the ink to do your more efficient play lines. If you mulligan it away and you hit another copy of it, That's not bad. You can go ahead and work with it and play with it if it's there. You just don't want to get multiple unequal cards stacked up in your hand in the early game in a matchup where you're trying to quest very early. And again, that's also a matchup where the discard engine goes in so strong because they have such a heavy top end, and they actually can empty their hand pretty quickly at times. So your discard helps out a lot. There's not a whole lot to say about the Pegasus. So what other utility pieces? Like I said, the Merfolk, it's a 1-drop, it's a multi-quester, it's your aggro. I'm going to get aggressive here. Forces your opponent to decide, are they going to use a song to remove it, or are they going to lose a card in their hand to remove it? And a lot of the time, they're not expecting a purple Bucky deck. So a lot of time they will challenge it and lose that card in their hand, and it just plays into your strategy even more because they're really not expecting that Bucky. They're expecting more of a tempo aggro type approach. Blue Fairy comes out. Like I said, if I have Bucky and Blue Fairy, like when do you decide between Bucky and Blue Fairy? The matchup definitely dictates this. Like versus Green Steel, if you're on the play, I really like Blue Fairy because she helps combat when your opponent's making you discard off of Bucky. And it's another evasive card, and there's not a whole lot else to say about it. Like, you can get to your Bucky. We have other discards in that matchup. Your Ursula is usually going to hit cards. Your Peter Pan can deal with Diablos. You can sing Friends to draw more cards. You can sing Sudden Chill to go after their hand. Like, the Blue Fairy is really, really nice in that matchup to help combat your opponent trying to discard your hand. If I do open Bucky and Blue Fairy after mulliganing, again, so before mulliganing, it kind of depends on the matchup. Like red, blue, I want the discard. Green, steel on the play, I want the Blue Fairy. On the draw, again, probably Blue Fairy because you're going to be playing a turn behind at that point and you're going to be discarding. So she's going to be very key to helping you keep cards in your hand. And she may even just force them to use a song on her, which means that your cards like Diablo and Ursula are going to get to stick around a little bit longer. But if you do open both of them and you have like your Floodborn playline too, what do you decide? What do you come down with on turn 2? When do you play each of them? Me personally, I will come down with Blue Fairy on turn 2 because she is evasive. So turn 3, you can usually quest with her safely, get that extra lore, and then come back with your Bucky on turn 3, and you just push the Floodborn package off one turn. So you go like Pegasus turn 1, Blue Fairy turn 2, Bucky turn 3, then you go into your Floodborn, draw a card, they discard cards, and that's when the advantage truly starts to swing. At one point at locals in our case tournament the other day, I was actually against Red Blue. He had one character on board, no cards in hand. I had 13 cards in my hand and 5 characters on board. Like, it was just insane the advantage this deck can produce. I got a screenshot. We'll throw it on the screen real quick there too. Like, it's a game on Pixelborn where just the advantage it can swing in such little time. I mean, that one was pretty late in the game, but these cards just work together so well. Like, you don't have to be like, oh, you can only keep one, you can only use one because turn 3 Floodborn. This isn't necessarily Bucky discard. It is, but it isn't. Like, you don't play this the same way you play Green Steel. This deck has different advantages, obviously, with a better draw engine. It's leaning heavier into, I'm going to play evasives and just kind of be protected from you. Like, either you better have those songs to deal with my cards, or I have more evasives than you do. I will outlast you. Where the deck can struggle is when you need to challenge into your opponent's board. That's something that the deck definitely can struggle with. That's where the bounce package comes in. So the bounce package, they're high strength characters, and in addition to that, we're playing how many was it? 4, 4, 4, 2, so 14 Floodborns, and that might seem a bit low for a deck running Bucky and Blue Fairy, but we're also playing 3 Snake, 4 Foxes, where these cards can bounce your Floodborns, and then they can come back on the next turn and get replayed. Or, like we said, if you get to that like 6 ink range, you can do things like quest with your Pegasus, play your Snake, bounce it, play little Pegasus, shift big Pegasus, Bucky, discard, and now you shifted Pegasus, so Bucky can even quest then at that point. Otherwise, you can do things like Snake or Fox, bounce a Diablo, replay the Diablo, and that 6 ink is just so important in this deck. I'm not saying when you get to 6 stop, but rarely do you need more than 8, and once you get to 6, so many plays open up for you. Other utility cards, obviously Ursula is going to be in there for your anti-songs. Versus Green Steel, I do try to get an Ursula a lot of the time. So like if you can have an Ursula or even like 2 of them, or Ursula Snake, Ursula Fox, something like that, some way to play Ursula 2 times to help keep these songs out of your opponent's hand. What songs do you go for? Well, if they have a Grab Your Swords, that is probably one of the harshest songs to this deck, so that's something you want to go after. Otherwise, Let the Storm Rage On, being able to deal 2 damage, draw a card, and very often off Ursula, they're going to deal 2 to another character, draw a card. So essentially, they draw 2 and kill 2 of your characters. That's not okay. You have to Ursula and get rid of it. So again, another thing in that Green Steel matchup is Ursula plus Ursula or Ursula plus Bouncer, so that way you can play her a couple of times. Peter Pan, we kind of mentioned it real briefly. The 3 willpower, the rush on 3 means that this is your anti-Diablo card. Do we need to play more? I don't think we do, because we have so many evasives in the deck, we can deal with Diablo pretty aggressively. However, just having that rush character in hand that they're not necessarily prepared for can be very effective. You also saw it in the one replay against the Deceiver of All. I needed 2 more to take her out, and she deals 2, so Peter Pan having rush comes down, finished off the character, and he actually has evasive too, so he protects himself from our opponent just challenging him with something else. A couple more utility cards. We have the Yzma in here. So Yzma and Bruno are kind of like your outs. These are your cards to deal with your opponent's boards or characters that are just otherwise impossible to deal with. Obviously, Yzma, they're going to draw a couple cards, and Bruno sometimes takes a little bit of luck. Unless they have no hand, then it truly is just removal, but that's your top end removal. Whether it's efficient or not, we're kind of missing strong, efficient removal in this color type. We did play Under the Sea for a while. However, it came down to Under the Sea or Peter Pan because I didn't want to be at 15 uninkables. I didn't necessarily want that high top end of the 8. And while when Under the Sea goes off, it was very, very nice. However, I was keeping track of it, and what was it? I don't remember the exact numbers, but I know it was over half of the time. Like if I had the games where Under the Sea got bricked in my hand or Under the Sea won me the game, more often than not, it was brick and dead in my hand as compared to winning me a game, whether I just didn't need it or I wasn't actually able to use it. Cards working together. What cards work together really well? And by the way, I have my notes. I said I was going to talk about a lot of things. If I forget anything, if you have any questions at all, let me know down below. I'm going to try and timestamp this. 38 minutes into the video, letting you guys know now. I'm going to try and timestamp this down below so that you guys can kind of navigate or come back to it, jump around like, oh, what did he talk about here, and kind of navigate the video a little bit better that way. Okay, back to talking. Then I'm going to go get a water break. Cards working together. So another fun thing, like this is like intricate play, not necessarily intricate, but play lines within the deck. So things like your Merfolk, your Fairy Godmother, even like your Madam Mim Fox, right? So cards like these, while very, very strong, they do have a downside that doesn't fit with the theme of the deck. They're not evasive. Even your Ursula Deceiver of All, she's not evasive. So the deck actually has a really neat way to deal with that. So let's say you like turn 1 Pegasus, turn 2 Bucky, turn 3 Ursula Deceiver of All. So turn 4 you want to sing your friends, draw 4 cards. You don't want your opponent to just come back and take out your Deceiver of All. Well, guess what? You can shift your Pegasus onto your Pegasus. Your opponent's going to discard from the Bucky, and now your Ursula Deceiver of All gains evasive. Other things you can do, you can like play a Fox, then shift your Pegasus, your Fox gains evasive. Now it can take out your opponent's evasive threats like a Diablo, like a Pegasus, or like anything else. Similar, you can come back with a shift Pegasus after a Merfolk. That's something I would do sometimes, especially if you have like multiple Merfolk in your hand. Turn 3, don't shift your Pegasus. Like go Pegasus turn 1 still. usually. Then turn 2, like your Bucky, your Blue Fairy, whichever one you have, or your Ursula if you have neither. Just check your opponent's hand, know how safe you are. Turn 3, go like double Merfolk. Then turn 4, shift your Pegasus. So now your Merfolks can go ahead, quest for 4. They have Evasive. They're probably going to stick around, quest for 4 more. They just gained you 8 lore in a 2-turn swing. What other cards we have here? We actually didn't mention it when we talked about utility cards, or maybe we did. But obviously your Wildcat, and he's not here for red-blue, believe it or not. Red-blue I think is a very favorable matchup. Out of all the top decks, it is by far our best matchup. It is more here for Sapphire Steel. Yeah, not a whole lot to say about it. The fact that they can run Grab Your Swords hurts. They put a little more presence on the board typically. I mean, the replay we saw was a different build, and he put an early presence on. That makes us struggle a little bit more, as you guys saw. Sapphire Steel typically will put out a little more early presence than Red-Blue will, so that can hurt. And the Wildcat, I was like, is a 2 of, he's evasive. He has 3 willpower, so not only is it just there for items, he actually deals with Diablo really, really well. A common thing you're going to hear a lot in this format is, how do you stop Diablo? There's a reason that it's probably the best card in the game currently. We have a lot of ways that we can deal with it. We have Diablo, we have Pan, we have Wildcat, we have Pegasus. We have the ways. Other play lines. So kind of talking about the shift Pegasus a whole bunch. A neat play that I was curious on. It didn't work on Pixelborn. I was like, why wouldn't this work? There's no reason. Like, just reading the cards, like other rulings, everything. I'm like, why would it not do it? I'm like, it's a simulator. That's probably what happened. So we asked in the official Discord, we asked in the Facebook group, talked with other friends, and it was confirmed through very, very reliable sources that Bucky does trigger when your opponent has no hand. So I don't know if you know where we're going with that yet, but if you have 1 or let alone 2 Buckies on board, when you're coming down in turn 6, you can play that Yzma, then target your opponent's character, shuffle that back into their deck, and then they draw 2 cards, and the 2 Buckies trigger. Well, they all trigger at one time, Yzma and the Buckies. You choose to resolve your Yzma first, shuffle their card, they draw 2 cards, then Bucky discard, Bucky discard. So that is a legal play. It's something to do. When I thought about it, I was like, ooh, I wonder if this works. We can turn Yzma into removal. And even if you don't have 2 Buckies, if you have 1 Bucky, it's still better than nothing, right? You're getting rid of their card on board. They're drawing 2, but they have to get rid of 1 of them. So they only get to keep 1. So essentially you get rid of 1 of their cards and you play a develop your brain for them is where you're pretty much at. They get 2 cards, have to discard 1. Other plays that we have in the big old box for this deck. Fairy Godmother. This card is so good. Like, I can't say enough. Like, whenever it quests, your other characters gain Challenger +3, and then when they're banished in the challenge this turn, they go back to your hand. It just helps you deal with your opponent's boards, which is, again, something the deck was struggling on. We had the Bruno, we have Yzma now, but we actually started out with 2, and I was like, this card is insane. We put her up to 4 almost immediately. You get her down, like I said, turn 5, which is going to trigger your Bucky. It's going to trigger your Fairy Godmother, so you're already gaining advantage off of her. And then the next turn, you go ahead, quest with her, get 2, and now you can just go completely irresponsible. Your Bucky, your Merfolks I've used, your Blue Fairies, you can crash all these cards because they're going right back to your hand. And then you can just replay them. Or you can do something like you saw in the one replay where we boost Diablo, goes back to your hand, you can replay the Diablo. And if you have the Bucky or the Blue Fairy on board, again, you're going to gain even more advantage over your opponent by it. So just like the bounce package, Fairy Godmother actually can help mitigate the Floodborn count and kind of almost cheat it into looking like it's a higher number than 14. Your Pan with Evasives getting Rush. That's actually pretty important, especially, once again, if you're dealing with your boards. Kind of a common theme with a lot of these plays. Like, it's just, you have so many different ways to deal with your opponent. This deck is, like I said, it's not linear at all. There's so many different play lines. Your hands dictate it. Your matchups dictate it. How do you mulligan? Do you hit what you need? And then you just kind of work with what you get. But so you can play this. It obviously has rush, can do his thing, but then like turn 5, if you didn't shift your Pegasus and you come down with your Pegasus, it has rush now. So it's a 3/3 rush. That's actually pretty good, and I've had games where that matters. It's not really a play line, but your Ursula double singing is just broken. Drawing 4 cards is just broken. Discarding 2, while it being very nice, this card kind of came up at weird times, came up late game a lot, came up in instances that I just did not like it. So that's why we ended up going from 4 to 3, and eventually we settled on just 2 sudden chill. But yeah, there's not a whole lot else to talk about. We kind of talked about the, like, oh, you got your Diablo, like quest, bounce, replay it, make them discard. Just so many different things going on with the deck. I've had a ton of fun with it. Mark my words, in like 3 weeks from now, once that championships start rolling around in July, purple Bucky discard is going to be a deck that people play. It's going to be a deck that pops up later in the format when people realize how good this deck is. And I'm not saying that this deck is fully optimized. I think it's pretty close. I think people may adapt it a little bit. The format's going to change. It's going to dictate some card choices. But for the most part, this is the most confident I have ever been putting a deck on YouTube. And that goes back to my Yu-Gi-Oh days as well. Okay, maybe not. But for sure, my Lorcana days, this is the most confident I have been in a deck. And it's probably due to the fact that I have been playing it nonstop for weeks. And, you know, like I said, have well over 100 games invested into it. So we put in the time, and here it is. Now you guys get to see it. The sauce. Someone take this to Chicago and win with it? That would be insane. Unlikely. I will say that. But it would be insane. And I absolutely think that if you took this deck to Chicago and you play just, you know, normal and you understand the plays of the deck, absolutely think you can top. Not saying it's guaranteed. Nothing's ever guaranteed. You could run into a bunch of steel songs. You could run into a bunch of bad matchups. You could draw very poorly. I've had games where I have 4 uninkable cards in a row off the top, and it's like we're only playing 13. It happens sometimes. So this is it, though. Sorry for rambling, especially there at the end. Maybe we'll do this again with another deck at a later time, breaking it down a lot more, talking about it. Like I said, this is the deck that I've been playing for a long time. I played this color combination last format. I played a discard version last format. I played Tempo a bunch. I played Tempo this format. Like, this is the color combination that I truly love, and that's why I don't mind going in depth with it for you guys. So thanks for sticking around if you watched the whole video. If you didn't and you just kind of jumped around, also, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, comment down below.